All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review. Today we're continuing our BCBA exam practice question series. We're going through a set of practice questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, check out behavioranalyststudy.com. We offer 3 practice exams, a task list, study guide, and of course our combo pack. Questions, comments, please let us know. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. As always, work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 1. Client that just moved from out of state is transferred to your caseload. Prior supervisor left detailed notes and treatment plans and offered to review them with you over the phone. You also have access to the client's medical history. You're meeting with the parents next week to discuss starting treatment. What is your first step in writing your behavior plan for this client? Okay, let's think about when we get cases transferred to us, when we need to write new plans for new clients, but clients with a history of ABA, because that sometimes changes things. In this case, given our situation where we have a supervisor willing to talk with us, plus detailed notes, plus treatment plans and a medical history, we're going to have a very good background on this client to start. Additionally, we're going to meet with the parents and talk with them before we start treatment. The question wants to know, based on all of that, what is going to be your first step in writing your behavior plan for this client? We're talking about your behavior plan that you will be using for these services when they start. A, speak with the previous supervisor, review their notes, and implement what worked before. What is the issue with A? You should definitely speak with that supervisor. You should definitely review their notes, but you can't just go ahead and implement what worked before. One, we can't plagiarize treatment plans or behavior plans. And two, what worked before worked in a different state, in different settings, with a whole slew of different environmental variables that might have changed now that the client has moved. We can't just go ahead and say, well, what worked previously is for sure going to work now. So speaking with them and reviewing their notes is good, but we can't just go implement what worked before without further assessment. B, interview the parents and begin mapping out the behavior plan with them. So an interview should certainly be part of the plan, but that's an indirect assessment. An indirect assessment is not enough for us to start writing behavior plans. What do we need to do? Well, we need to do C, conduct a functional behavior assessment on the client after interviewing the parents. Even though we have all of this information, even though we have all of the medical history, we still have to do our own assessment. We're in a new place, new variables, new people. It's not enough for interviews. It's not enough for data. It's not enough for records. We have to do our own assessment. And then D, if there are similarities between the new client and one of your current clients, use that behavior plan. So again, even your own behavior plans, you shouldn't plagiarize. Even your own behavior plans, you shouldn't duplicate recklessly. The goal is to conduct your own assessment and get a fresh take on what you need to do and use. All right. If your assessment indicates that aspects of a prior treatment plan still work today, well, then that's a different story. Well, you can't make that judgment without going through the proper steps of a real assessment. So, given all of this, what is your first step in writing the behavior plan for this client? Well, C, conduct a functional behavior assessment on the client after interviewing the parents. This is going to give you a full scope of the client. A behavior technician is teaching letter identification to a client. This week, the target letter is D. The technician first writes the letter D using a green marker and circles it. The technician then removes the circle, followed by writing the letter D using dashed lines. The technician is attempting to do what? First thing that should pop in your mind is this is obviously a prompting procedure. Okay, we're manipulating this letter D to get this person or this learner to identify D, right? So they write the letter D using a green marker and circling it. They then remove the circle, followed by writing the letter D using dash lines. So slowly but surely, they're removing all these little prompts. So what are they doing? What are they attempting? A, they're attempting to utilize response prompting. Remember, response prompting acts directly on the response. So physical prompting is response prompting. If you're manipulating the stimulus prompt. Here, we're manipulating the letter D. And that's a stimulus prompt. Okay, they're not using response prompting. It's a stimulus prompt. You have to know the difference, right? B, they're trying to manipulate an establishing operation. Are we trying to deprive or satiate anything here? No, we're not really keying in on the MOs here. We're looking really at this letter D and manipulating the stimulus in different contexts and trying to evoke this response. So C, transfer stimulus control. Transferring stimulus control sometimes gives people issues. All we're essentially saying when we're transferring stimulus control is we're fading prompts, right? Because you're trying to transfer stimulus control from a prompt to a not prompt. So if our first prompt, which is writing the letter D using a green marker and circling it, that's going to initially have stimulus control over the response. We need to transfer stimulus control, or basically fade it, transfer it to a more realistic letter D. Okay, so we're going to start fading these prompts. It's essentially the same thing. So by removing all these modifications, slowly stimulus control is being transferred. And then D, provide preferred task to the client. Well, it's the same task over and over again. The stimulus is being changed. And the reason the stimulus is being changed is so that stimulus control can successfully be transferred. So what is the technician attempting to do? Well, C, transfer stimulus control. You get home one night from a long day of work, open the front door, and hear your fire alarm beeping loudly. Frustrated, you get back into your car and head to your favorite restaurant for a margarita. The fire alarm serves as a consequence relative to what? This question is really just working on our ability to break down a scenario question, identify antecedents, identify consequences, that sort of thing. So in this, we are looking at the fire alarm. All right, fire alarm exists in the context of the question. We're looking at it specifically as a consequence. So let's see. Your antecedent, you get home one night, a long day of work. Response, you open the front door. Opening the front door leads to you hearing your fire alarm beeping loudly. So the fire alarm is serving as a consequence relative to you opening the front door. So A, getting home one night. Well, getting home one night from a long day of work is the antecedent to opening the front door. Hearing the fire alarm beeping loudly is the consequence for opening the front door. So the fire alarm serves as a consequence relative to B, opening the front door. Now C, getting back into your car, follows hearing the fire alarm, right? And going to your favorite restaurant follows hearing the fire alarm. So these can't be, the fire alarm can't be a consequence relative to those. If anything, the fire alarm is an antecedent, right? Consequences come after, antecedents come before. The fire alarm comes before getting back into the car and before going to your favorite restaurant. The fire alarm follows opening the front door. So the fire alarm serves as a consequence relative to opening the front door. Actually, a fairly straightforward question. We broke it down a little more intensely just to demonstrate how you should start thinking about antecedents and consequences, because all these different events exist. They can be antecedents and they can be consequences. It depends on what context you're looking at them in. All right. So it's very important that we recognize we're looking at the fire alarm in the context of acting as a consequence, not an antecedent, right? As a consequence. So the fire alarm serves as a consequence relative to opening the front door. At a family gathering, Brenda and her entire family play a trivia game. Brenda's dad is a trivia master and reads out the questions while the different groups text him their answers. What type of verbal operant is occurring here? All right, let's be careful here, right? What do we need to know about verbal operants? We need to know what evokes them. We need to know if there's point-to-point similarity, and we need to know if there's formal similarity. In this case, Brenda's dad reads out the questions. The different groups text him their answers. 1, is there point-to-point? Well, no, he's reading the question, they're answering the question. 2, is there formal similarity? Again, no, right? Because he reads out the question and they text him the answer. Okay. So could it be an intraverbal? Well, sure, right? The texting is evoked by this verbal SD and there's no point-to-point correspondence. Intraverbals essentially make up conversation, okay, answering questions. Why is it not a transcription? Well, transcription has point-to-point correspondence. If Branda's dad read out a question and the groups texted the exact question word for word and there was point-to-point, that would serve as transcription. In this case, it doesn't. Textual is evoked by a written stimulus, and Brenda's dad is saying it out loud. And then an echoic has point to point again, right? So since we don't have point to point, we can eliminate B, C, and D and pick A. That's why it's so important that you understand what verbal operants have point to point and which ones have formal similarity. It's going to get you through these questions pretty simply if you know those aspects of the verbal operants. So, what type of verbal operant is occurring here? Well, it's an intraverbal. Brenda's dad reads the questions. The groups text him their answers. No point to point, we have intraverbal. A parent who is relatively knowledgeable in applied behavior analysis informs their behavior analyst that extinction has been effective at reducing the target behavior over the past month. When asked how they are implementing extinction, the parent says they are delivering attention every 3 to 5 minutes during meal times. What has this parent done? Okay, let's think about this. What do we think this parent has done? They claim, and remember, we're always doing all our work in the question, right? We don't jump to the answers. So the parent claims that extinction has reduced the target behavior. But when asked how they implement extinction, the parent says they're delivering attention every 3 to 5 minutes. Well, if you're delivering reinforcement, in this case attention, on a schedule, what is that considered? Well, that's non-contingent reinforcement. So what mistake has the parent made? A, they properly implemented extinction. Well, we're not sure. Extinction's a consequence procedure. Okay, we don't know what consequences they're implementing. We know they're implementing some sort of non-contingent reinforcement schedule because we have attention being delivered on a schedule. So the parent has actually done B. They've confused extinction for non-contingent reinforcement. What tends to happen? C, confused extinction for response blocking is very common. Remember, response blocking prevents a response from being emitted. Okay, you can't emit a response if it's blocked. Response blocking is not extinction. We have to remember that. And then D, confuse extinction for punishment. Punishment and extinction are two separate things, okay? Both act to reduce behavior, but they're two very different things. So we can't confuse extinction for any of these things. Unfortunately, what the parent has done is confuse extinction for non-contingent reinforcement. Now, are we sure the non-contingent reinforcement is working? No. All we know is they're claiming extinction, their implementation, is actually just them implementing non-contingent reinforcement. So what has this parent done? Well, B, confuse extinction for non-contingent reinforcement. Jared is learning how to tie a tie from his dad. His dad begins with errorless teaching and slowly fades out the physical prompts. As Jared gets better at tying the tie, how should his dad begin to teach loosely? Okay, teach loosely is one of our generalization procedures. Teaching loosely, we are altering and changing and varying non-critical, non-essential aspects of the environment. So these are aspects of the environment that don't have direct relation, a functional relation to the response, but we don't want them to gain control over the response. And so we're going to vary them, okay, occasionally. So in this case, we're tying the tie. And we want to teach loosely, meaning we got to change some non-critical aspects of tying the tie. So A, change the color of the tie that Jared is learning with. All right. Does the color of the tie affect how Jared ties the tie? It shouldn't. The color of the tie should be non-critical. And this is a good example. We don't want the color of the tie to start to gain control over the tying behavior. So changing the color of the tie is a good example of varying something non-critical, which we don't want to gain control over the behavior. Do we pick A and move on? No, we read everything. B, have Jared tie using only one hand. Well, that doesn't really make any sense. Okay, that isn't what teaching loosely is. C, have Jared tie the tie using a different method than what he originally learned. Now, that is a form of generalization, right? That would be more of a response generalization, all right? But we're not doing that here, okay? We're just varying aspects of the environment. And then A, present Jared with a bow tie instead of a regular tie. Now, presenting a bow tie instead of a regular tie, that's a critical aspect, because now that really changes how the response looks. A is the only one that should be non-critical. Color should not be critical for Jared tying that particular tie. So, How should Dad begin to teach loosely? Well, he should change the color of the tie that Jared is learning with. What form of measurement is most closely linked to spaced responding DRL? Spaced responding DRL is simply a DRL procedure where reinforcement is provided each time a response occurs, given a certain amount of interresponse time. You know that definition, you can easily answer this question. What form of measurement is most closely linked to spaced responding DRL? Well, A, interresponse time. You're delivering reinforcement for a response as long as a certain amount of time has passed. That's our interresponse time. Doesn't have to do with the latency. Doesn't have to do with how often the response is occurring. Not even their rate. We're worried about interresponse time here. What is the time in between that response, and what are we setting it at in order to give reinforcement? So what form of measurement is most closely linked to space responding DRL? Well, A, interresponse time. And then what are three fundamental aspects of science? And this is at the very beginning of what you should be learning. The three fundamental aspects that make up science. A, prediction, verification, replication is baseline logic. Got to know that. B, description, prediction, control. Good. These are aspects of science, right? We're going to describe and observe. We're going to predict what might happen, and then we're going to attempt to exert control. C, independent variables, dependent variables, and extraneous variables. Well, those are more experimental design. And then D, reliable, valid, and accurate. That is what we're looking for in good data. So you need to know all four of these trios and what matches to which. But if we're talking about aspects of science, well, we're really talking about description, prediction, and control. Excellent. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for our study materials. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.